Hi, welcome to Ultimate Wildlife Gardens. My name's Chris Caligari. On some of my videos, occasionally one of my cats pops up. Unfortunately, they tend to be wherever I am, so if I'm filming out of doors and they're out of doors, they're usually quite close by. Now, let me put my cards on the table. I'm passionate about wildlife, as you probably well know. I'm also an ardent animal lover, and I've been a vegetarian for 45 years, something like that. So I've got a bit of a dilemma about cats and wildlife, and this topic is of paramount importance, I think. It tends to get glossed over because it's rather controversial. I'm an animal lover. I love all animals without exception. I have 2 cats, both rescue cats, and I love them to bits, and I wouldn't harm them, or I look after them as best as I possibly can. I also have a wildlife area, and so this causes great conflicts, and this is the same for most of us. I know that most of us fit into this camp. Now, in this video, I will not be sitting on the fence. There's no point making a video which does that. So I am leading to solutions. I think, obviously biased, but I think the conclusion which I'm bound to reach is the only logical and sensible answer. So this video does lead somewhere. It isn't just talking about the problems. Okay, I'm bound to touch upon the effects on wildlife. I'm not going to drone on about all the negatives, because there are negatives, really serious negatives. I think about them in 2 categories. Direct. Let's deal with those first of all. Cats obviously kill lots of small mammals. Dreadful. They also take a large number of birds. Lots of figures are bandied around, and exact figures don't matter. But if we just take one of the figures, which is often bandied, and that is, in the UK, there are estimated to be about 200 million animal deaths attributable directly to cats. Now, these deaths include the small mammals, of course, but they also include things like slow worms, grass snakes, birds, and it's reckoned that about 20% of that 200 million deaths are birds. I know it varies from cat to cat. I've got 2 cats. One of them isn't really that bothered about hunting, bit of a lazy old thing, and the other one is very, very active and takes more than its fair share. That's a real problem. So direct effects are, 1, the things that they eat, but not quite so conspicuously. Number 2 of the direct effects is disruption of the food chain. Our wildlife is a very delicate balance between predator and prey, and we're introducing an animal which is having a huge effect on that balance. I have in this area, my wildlife area, tawny owls, barn owls, foxes, even polecats in the immediate sort of area. And the cat, of course, is taking the food of those. It's disrupting the food chains. This is appalling. I take it very seriously. Only the other day, a barn owl, feeding chicks, I suspect, was feeding in my wildlife area, smallish though it is. I saw it land in there a couple of times, and I photographed it literally from my wildlife area. Now, I'm well aware, and we all are, as those with ecological backgrounds, which is most of us, we know that my cats, the cats around here, and there are lots of them, they're taking the prey of that barn owl, and that barn owl is trying to feed its chicks. That's a real problem. If you're browsing, do stay with it, because the most important parts of this video, I'm only just getting onto them. So far, I've dealt with things which are fairly obvious and most people are aware of. I now move on to something else, which is the indirect effects of cat ownership. It applies to pets in general, domestic animals in general, but this is applicable to cats. Cats need feeding. Duh. Well, of course they do. All domestic animals we've got to look after, they're going to need food. So if I buy my cat food, which most of us do, I'm supporting animal farming. I'm supporting the killing of animals. Now, as a veggie, I'm really not keen on doing that at all. More than that, though, for the production of pet meat, it's likely to be intensively produced. Now, that is a bad thing. I totally abhor modern farming techniques, or many modern farming techniques for the rearing of animals. We should have moved beyond that. Human evolution surely should have taken us beyond the way that we treat animals. But of course the pet industry, it wants cheap, easily available sources of meat, and virtually all of the brands of pet food that you're going to be buying are going to have meat. Almost certainly they're going to be produced using intensive methods. That's not good. Even fish, I expect, even though some of it may be called waste products, we're still supporting the mass production of fish and meat. If you look on the packet, sometimes it will say that it contains chicken. Well, I wouldn't mind betting that a lot of those chickens are reared in conditions which I really find appalling. But also, the fish, there may be waste products, but I'm supporting that mechanism for producing animal protein. That I find very, very difficult to live with. Intensive production of grassland for animals. Not happy with that. Not only am I not happy with the methods that are going to be used to produce that pet food, but when we think about in the UK, I have no figure for it, but I'll bet it is hundreds of thousands of acres which are used to produce food for our pets. Cats. A lot of cat food contains all sorts of plant material as well, perhaps cereals or something. They're going to be produced fairly intensively. But of course, if we are producing meat, that is an incredibly inefficient way to use our land space. So we, as pet owners, as cat owners, are responsible for the use of hundreds of thousands of acres of land, and we're putting pressure on the land which could otherwise perhaps be used for rewilding projects. So it's of huge benefit to wildlife if we don't use our produce from the lands to feed pets. It's something which is often glossed over, but surely it's a really important topic and something we ought to bear in mind when we're thinking about the cost to wildlife of our pets. Just a little aside here, I do know that there are meat-free foods for cats which are available. The veterinary profession even is a little bit split about these. Cats are obligate carnivores, and they've evolved on a meat-only diet. So you can't just feed cats on vegetable matter. There are certain components of their diet which are absolutely essential, and if they don't get those components, it has severe health effects upon them, and it will kill them. So any meat-free diet has to have very carefully controlled amounts of some nutrients in there, so we can't just put a cat onto a vegetarian diet. It doesn't work. Just for completeness, there are meat-free foods available, but you have to be really careful about using those. That's concentrating on the negatives of cats. They're absolutely adorable animals. I love my cats to bits. So the positives, I don't think I really need to go into them. That's why we have cats, because they are such gorgeous animals. I've got dogs as well. They also are gorgeous, in case they can hear me and getting jealous. But the conclusion is, obviously, that however much we love the cats, it's causing problems, huge problems, for our wildlife. So we need to reach a conclusion about what we're going to do. Well, let me just skim over a few things that are often mentioned, because otherwise people will just write into me and tell me about them, and there's no need. Attaching bells to cats, it can have some effect, I think. I don't do it myself. I'm not convinced of the efficacy of doing that. And also I don't particularly want my cats with potential strangulation stuff round their neck. I would try and avoid that. Some people keep them indoors, and so that is advocated by some. Now, I don't personally agree with that. You may, and it's not for me to disagree with you, but for me, cats have basic urges and instincts. They are obligate carnivores. They have an innate instinct to hunt and to kill, and to deprive them of that, for me, personally, I think is a form of cruelty, in the same way as keeping birds in cages, chickens, budgerigars, whatever. Anything which is confined and can't express itself and can't live its life and follow its instincts is, to me, a form of cruelty. Sometimes people restrict the hours that the cats go out of doors. This, I think, might well help. They keep them in all night to avoid them being around during the evening and during first thing in the morning when the hunting is maximal. I don't do that either. I am an animal lover, and I like my cats to lead the best possible life that they can. I will always do my best to give them the best life that I can. So, for me, even though they might help, for me, they're not really solutions to the problem. So now, let's get to the actual nitty-gritty of where the solution is, because we really shouldn't go on as we are. Cats do devastate our wildlife, one way and another. There has to be a solution. For me and my conscience, perhaps for you as well, there's only one route to go. Right, at this point, don't think that this old boy here is going to go waffling off on some sort of tangent. There is a point to this. One of my heroes was Scott of the Antarctic, Robert Falcon Scott. Where on earth is this going? What the hell's he got to do with cats? Actually, I think absolutely everything. Let me explain. When he was dying in the Antarctic in his tent and writing his last thoughts home to his wife, one of the important vital bits in there, he had a son, and he said to his wife, make the boy to be interested in natural history. And indeed he went on a little bit further to say about outdoor life in general. Now that was Robert Falcon Scott as he was dying. His son, Peter, many, many years later, became a boyhood hero of mine, and that's Sir Peter Scott. And by God, did he become interested in natural history. He was a most marvellous man, and as a schoolboy I used to go down to Slimbridge. Danger of waffling, old boy, but he started the Wildfowl Trust down at Slimbridge, and that became the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, which runs today. Now, Peter Scott has been dead for 35 years, but his work goes on. His legacy is absolutely huge. As a schoolboy, as a hero, he's still a hero now. He was also one of the founding fathers of WWF, the World Wildlife Fund. Great, great man. Okay, the point of that little apparent side shoot is that for me, the only answer with cats and to dogs to a certain extent is that we must make people around us, young people, of the same mind as ourselves. Now, for me, much as I love my cats, I'm determined not to have any more cats, because much as I love them, I also love wildlife, and the two are incompatible. I have a choice to have cats or not. So personally, I will not in future have cats. So what can we do? Well, all of the cats I've ever had, and I've had cats all my life, I was brought up with cats. Every single one without exception was always neutered from a very early age, because we don't want cats giving birth, which we've then got a home, which are then going to take a role on wildlife. But here's the key point. Really, we want to change the culture, and for everybody, especially our young people, to think ecologically and think about the damage that we're doing. So when little Johnny or little Jenny says, "Daddy, can we have a little pussycat?" I hope that I would, if that question was put to me by a young person, I hope that I would be able to convince them that if we care about our wildlife and if we love our wildlife, and I hope they would have been brought up to be of that mind anyway, they could be persuaded that it is far better to love, to appreciate, to nurture our wildlife rather than to have domestic animals, because the two really are not compatible. Danger of offshoot again, but for the same reasons. I would not have dogs again either, much as I love them. 2 rescue dogs, gorgeous animals, wouldn't harm them for the world. But I wouldn't have personally any more domestic animals. And I think that is the only way for people that love wildlife and love their pets. I think it is the only way that forms a sensible future. That is to try and produce a culture where we don't keep pets because their toll is dreadful on the wildlife. I hope you found this video useful. It isn't full of many bright parts, but it does address head-on an area which I think most people tend to avoid. If you Google pussy videos, no, don't do that. If you look for videos, there are things around, there are newspaper articles, etc. But I think most people skirt around the issue, and we as a country of animal lovers tend to avoid it. But I am of an age and a position where I think we've got to face facts, we've got to tell the truth, and we've got to say, I don't think that we ought to be keeping cats, I don't think we ought to be keeping domestic animals, and I certainly will not go off on the tangent about giving up meat, which would be such an enormous step forward for helping wildlife. I hope you enjoyed this video, whether you agree with me or not, and if you'd be kind enough to click the like, thumbs up button, I'd be grateful. If you'd share it amongst people, if it just makes people think perhaps, and it may do some good, I hope so. But above all, I'd be really very, very grateful if you subscribe, and if you want to watch any of my other videos, I'd be very happy to see you. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.